Just 1 minute to talk about Doctor Who. Just 1 minute, or maybe two. Welcome to YouTube, we're talking Doctor Who. For you.
Welcome to the third episode in this series on ranking Doctor Who stories. This time we're doing the Third Doctor. For more information about the preference ranker that I've used, head over to the first episode. But we're going to crack straight on with this list. 24 stories to rank, and here we go with number 1. Spirit from Space goes in directly at number 1. As I said in the previous episode, first episode stories for Doctors rank quite highly with me for the most part, and last episode stories rank quite low for the most part. And Spirit from Space, well, as far as I recall, this must be like I think the second story I saw on VHS after the Five Doctors in the mid-90s, and I have owned it in many iterations, and it's always stood out. I think it took a while for me to kind of get the whole it was made on film, special circumstances of the story, and because it's an early one, it's very meaningful to me. But I think it's a great story. The Autons are a fantastic villain, never better than in this first outing for them. And the post-regeneration stuff for Jon Pertwee works really, really well. I wasn't particularly familiar with Troughton before, so I wasn't sort of... as with a lot of these things, I've not really ever really watched Classic Who in order, so I've never really kind of got the sweep of the order of things. But it's a great start. It's a great start for him, and I will always. It's comfort Who. It's comfort Who. Doctor Who and the Silurians in at number 7. I will say that season 7 I think is the only season of Doctor Who where I'm like every single story and this is good. And Doctor Who and the Silurians is a fantastic story. I've already talked about how I like Malcolm Hulke as a writer, and his genius of being told the format of the new series by Terrance Dicks, and him kind of you've either got mad scientist or aliens, and then them working out there's this third possibility of they've always been here. The idea of a previous race is fantastic, and they're realised really, really well. Again, not done better than in this first story. And I have fond memories of this because this was part of the very abortive repeat season in '99 after the Doctor Who night, where we had Spirit from Space, then we had Silurians, and then they skipped straight to Genesis of the Daleks and then stopped. But that was my first encounter with actually watching the story. Obviously, I read the novel before, but I seem to remember eating macaroni cheese and watching it. So there's a nostalgia for that as well. It's a fantastic story. Now, I said that every story in series season 7 is great, so I'm slightly surprised that Ambassadors of Death has come this low, but it could just be that I like a lot of Third Doctor stories. As I've got older, I've actually appreciated Pertwee's Doctor less, I think. I kind of see the slightly sort of paternalistic side of the character that I'm not particularly fond of, but he's fantastic in this first season against Liz Shaw as a sort of almost his equal. This is a great story where there's a lot of detective work going on. You're not really sure who's doing what for what reasons, and ultimately, the whole the aliens are, good guys really, and it's all to do with sort of one of those first contact misunderstandings. Carrington is motivated by complicated motives, and it's got a great score, and obviously it loses something through the quality of what we have, but it's a great entry in the season. And then Inferno in at number 4. This is there partly because of nostalgia. This was another early VHS tape that my brother had. The parallel universe stuff is fantastic. A way of making the story longer in a way that works and entertains, enabling you to sort of transform characters into, other versions of themselves, and also, turn Benton into a monster, literally. That works really, really well, and just the way that the characters play the different universes is fantastic. I watched this again recently, and it holds up. It's a fantastic story. So, season 7, fantastic. Even Ambassador of Death down there at 14. I love them all. They're all a great season. As we go from Spirit from Space being my favourite Pertwee story to Terror of the Autons coming in at 17, this is one of those book to TV disappointments, because I loved the book of Terror of the Autons. It was like, had seen Spearhead, would have read Spearhead at some point, read Terror of the Autons. I slightly missed the boat on the VHS. By the time I knew that Terror of the Autons existed, and I went to W.H. Smith to say, have you got it to order? And they looked in their book and it wasn't available. I think I'd literally missed it by maybe a year. So this was one of those ones that I was really keen to see. And then when I finally did see it, I was thoroughly disappointed. I think, there's something that happens between season 7 and season 8 in terms of the production that doesn't work for me. Like everything visually about it. You're constantly reminded that Spearhead was better. Obviously the introduction of Delgado's Master. I love Delgado's Master, but I think there's just something very disappointing about having read it and then seen it and gone, no, this is not working for me. Mind of Evil, on the other hand, fantastic story. Lovely to see it recoloured. That really gave it a new lease of life, I think, because I obviously only have seen it as black and white. But I'd always loved the book, and it's a fantastic story for the Master. The prison setting, works. It's this the ongoing battle between the two of them in this season. It's a story that really works for me. Music's great as well. Claws of Axos. This is one of those few stories, and I've talked about this on TMDWP a very long time ago, where I can still remember reading the book and the images that the book conjured up. Which again, you see it on screen, it's a disappointment, but it's a great story. I love it. I love the story. The Axons, seemingly these friendly aliens coming to Earth, and then gradually revealed to be the villains of the piece who are going to absorb the whole planet, and then Delgado turns up at the right moment to be like, aha, I'm the villain of this story again. And I think some people could outstay their welcome, but he's such a fun villain that you're excited to see him in every story that he turns up in. And obviously the TARDIS gets to play a role in the story, which is welcome at this point in Pertwee's run. Colony in Space. I'm slightly surprised it's ended up down here because a lot of people don't have good words to say for it. Obviously, lots of people like the book, and I like the book too. I think there's some great stuff. There's some great world building in the book that just isn't in the story. I do enjoy watching it. Just there's lots of other things that are better to watch than Colony in Space. This might be my other piece of sacrilege for this particular episode. The Demons just doesn't do it for me. I'm not entirely sure what it is. Obviously, Pertwee, it was his favourite. And I've been to Oldbourne, I've done videos there. But it just does, and it just doesn't work for me. I don't know whether it's again the quality of the image is partly problematic. There's some of the stuff that just doesn't look good. That said, I haven't seen the season 8 box set to know how much better it looks on Blu-ray if it does. But yeah, no, for some reason it just doesn't quite do it for me. It's one of those ones that is less than the sum of its parts. I would love to appreciate it more, but I don't. So we're into season 9, Day of the Daleks. Loved again. This is so a lot of these higher up ones. Yeah, this is definitely childhood nostalgia. I had this on VHS tape quite early on, and I love the timey, as we would come to call it later, the timey-wiminess of the story. The idea that in going back to prevent a thing, you are the cause of it. The fact that it doesn't occur to Shura that him blowing up the house is the explosion that he's, that feels a little bit, well, it is, yeah. But the Doctor's kind of like, Stars didn't blow that house and cause the wars, you did it yourselves. Like, that moment is just electric. And the controller, fantastic, that he goes from, the Quisling, as the Doctor calls him, to finally redeeming himself at the end, only to be exterminated, is some fantastic character development. The way that he kind of is trying to hide the world from, the Doctor and Joe, and the Daleks themselves. They're not the best aspect of the story, as we know. It wasn't written as a Dalek story initially, but and the voices leave something to be desired. Such that Nick Briggs's version but Nick Briggs's Dalek voice is the only good thing about the special edition. Everything else about the special edition, I think, makes it worse. So I feel that I should do an edit one day where you just put the Dalek voices over the proper thing. Anyway, that's a story for another time. Day of the Daleks, great story. And the Curse of Peladon, equally, good. Always loved the Peladon stories, like both of them. The sort of, let's do a bunch of aliens on a planet as it's, the EU parallel thing that works quite well. And Joe getting to travel off world is fantastic. I mean, I guess she's already done it in Colony in Space, but any time we've got a change of scene in the Pertwee era is nice. David Troughton, fantastic. Jeffrey Toone as Hepesh. It's a really well plotted, well done story. Love it. And the Sea Devils comes in very high again. An early VHS. I prefer it to the Silurians, probably because of that reason. Also, it's got the Master in it. The stuff at the prison is fantastic with the Doctor and the Master and Trenchard. And the Sea Devils themselves are delightfully well realised monsters, and I like the score. I know for some people it's a real problem with this story, but I like the experimental nature of it and the fact that it's something different from Dudley. Can't really fault it. It's in my top 3. And then yes, one of the big drops in this whole thing, going from 3 to 23. And I'm not entirely sure quite why the Mutants ends up down the bottom, because when I think about it, there's lots to like about it as a story. I think the production is a problem. It doesn't look great. I'm slightly and it's probably one of those 6-parters that outstays its welcome. I think is probably what I'll say about that. And the Time Monster, I think I can more readily say that I don't like the Time Monster. Again, overly long, a bit of a mess, really. And the presence of yes, it's definitely the weakest story that Roger Delgado plays a part in. Unfortunately, the setting, the Atlantis stuff, I'm just like, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for a lot of people. So I know I'm not in bad company there. The Three Doctors. This is an interesting one. It's ended up 12th. I know a lot of people think of it very highly. I think this is a combination of that I saw the Five Doctors first. So although the Five Doctors has its flaws that I can see now, nothing is ever going to get past the fact that it was the first proper story, dimensions in time aside. Five Doctors was the first story that I saw on VHS, and I love it, and I've always, gone back to it as a piece of comfort, Doctor Who, in the same way that Spirit from Space is. And then I read the Three Doctors before I saw it, as with many Doctor Who stories, and I think not quite as bad as Terror of the Autons, but seeing it, it did not live up to the expectations that I had for it. And even with Troughton being on good form, I think the seeing Hartnell in place really doesn't work for me in this story, which is sad because you kind of, I love Hartnell, and so I think that's possibly what doesn't help. Which is not terrible. It's still in the top half of Pertwee stories for me, according to this list. I would just rate many others higher than it, including the story that follows. Now, as I said when we did Hartnell, Planet of Giants scores very highly for me because I love the whole shrink people down, put them in a situation thing. I love that about Carnival of Monsters, and just the politics on Inter Minor going on at the same time. You know, I love the three Inter Minorans and Vorg and Schörner kind of interacting with them. It's a delight of a story, and you know, great to see that again. The Doctor is now free to travel again. Aspect of the story, and it really, really plays really, really well. I love it as a piece of Doctor Who. Now, I was slightly surprised that Frontier in Space has ended up down in 15th. This is one of those ones where I'm just like, I think I slightly disagree with how the preference revealer has rolled things out, because I love Frontier in Space, and I think I would possibly put it ahead of some of the stories that we've got above it. But again, it could just be that like I love lots of Jon Pertwee stories. I think we can see that my sort of my meh point is probably about Terror of the Autons, and downwards and everything above you can kind of say is good Doctor Who, in my opinion. Last appearance of the Master, sadly, though. Well, no, we'll come to that when we get to the end of this. You know, hearing what they had planned, I'm not sure I would have been a fan of what they had planned for finishing him off. I like the fact that the Master lives to fight another day. But yeah, no, it's fab story. Absolutely brilliant performance from Delgado, and great for Katie Manning. You know, separated from the Doctor for a period of the story, kind of really has her own storyline. And the Draconians are fantastic. You know, really, really well realised alien race in terms of conception and execution. And Planet of the Daleks, yeah, it's not for me. You know, Terry Nation recycling his tropes, as it were. You know, it's been said before. There's a lot of him recycling the very first Dalek story. You know, it doesn't really do it for me, I'm afraid. And the Green Death, you know, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Love this story. Great final outing for Joe Grant. You know, and you point to this as one of the. It's very easy to point to this as the green political episode of Doctor Who, and yes, it is that. But I think if it was just that, I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do. I think it's one of those ones where the team that you've loved for the whole of the Pertwee era really firing on all cylinders. You know, when Mike Yates goes to infiltrate, it's a delightful moment, and Pertwee hamming it up. Well, not hamming it up. Pertwee loving the costume changes, yeah, and the accents and all that kind of stuff. And the evil computer at the back of it. You know, it's a great piece of Doctor Who. Absolutely love it. The Time Warrior, yeah. So this is another one of those, enjoyed the book, didn't like the TV version, which I think is largely down to the direction from poor old Alan Bromley. The Sontarans are a great design, but yeah, there's something, and you know, the new title sequence is great, but there's just something about it in the visual form that doesn't work for me in the same way as the book works. I'm sure I will come back to this in the subsequent stories that we're about to go through for here and for Baker, but also Sarah Jane Smith is not the amazing companion that most of the people think she is, in my opinion. Like, she's perfectly fine. The very odd acting choice that she makes to have her mannerisms based on like an 8-year-old cousin, I think it is, somewhere in the info text for Invasion of the Dinosaurs, that fact is revealed, and I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. It also makes a lot of sense of why she's just weird. Anyway, let me not waffle on more about her. because, you know, I love a lot of the stories that she's in, just not because of her, including the next story, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, one of my favourite Target novels, definitely. And for years it was, you know, derided as the one with the dinosaurs. And then when I finally saw it, you know, I was like, no, yeah, it works in spite of the dodgy dinosaur puppets, because it's such a strong story, and also has that, you know, fantastic left turn moment halfway through that, you know, Malcolm Hulke skillfully is like, how do we do these six? He's good at making the long stories work. You're like, we're on a spaceship now. What the heck is going on? And I think also just because very few writers would have been brave enough to kind of look at people who were politically in the same sort of ballpark as him, you know, in terms of being on the left, and going, well, what would happen if they were the bad guys? You know, it's a move that I can't see the show making, certainly in sort of modern times, and having Mike Yates gone rogue for you know, obviously good character reasons is another. It's just a fantastic story for, you know, character development, as well as the sort of idea of it. Absolutely fantastic. So as you can see, we've got 3 left in this season. We've got 13, 22 and 24. Who's going to land up where? Death of the Daleks is at 13th. Not as good as Day, definitely better than Planet of the Daleks. And again, I think a lot of my love for this is because it was an early VHS. You know, I can see the problems with it now, and, you know, plot-wise, it doesn't make sense that the Daleks can't use their guns but can move around. You know, that whole aspect of the story, you just have to kind of hand wave away. But the idea of the Doctor having to form an alliance with the Daleks to survive on the planet is a good one. You know, and the idea of a civilization that was more advanced than humanity, but their own technology turned against them. You know, it's not a very original plot, but, you know, it works very well here. So we're down to the last 2. Monster of Peladon in at 22. I said before that I love both Peladon stories. You know, I do enjoy this one, but I guess it's just by comparison with the previous Peladon story and all of the ones above it, it doesn't quite cut the mustard, sadly. And as the last Ice Warrior story of the classic series, you wish they'd had something better, which, you know, obviously they would have had another one in the 80s had not season 23 been cancelled. But that's not a great story. Mission to Magnus, you know, I think Monster Peladon is better than that. So, and it's great to see Alpha Centauri again, of course it is. Which leaves only one gap for Pertwee's final story, Planet of the Spiders, but this is like the platonic thing for me, isn't it? You've got first story best, last story worst, you know, properly kind of propping up that stereotype that I've already introduced you to. It's just drivel. I've never liked this story, and I think partly because I came late to it in both book and TV form. I'm sure that's part of it, you know. I didn't see it until very late in the day. But it doesn't do anything for me at all, you know. And it's 6 episodes, so, you know, it's I'm just going to stop there. I don't like Planet of the Spiders. Sorry, Planet of the Spiders fans. So that's my list. That's my 24 Jon Pertwee stories in order. Do pop in the comments where you disagree with me, particularly, but maybe where you agree with me as well. If you want to do the preference really yourself and do the whole list, then please feel free. And obviously, the next one of these will be a lot more stories to rank the Tom Baker years.
Just 1 minute to talk about Doctor Who. Just 1 minute, or maybe 2. Welcome to YouTube, we're talking Doctor Who.